Are we live?
Are we live, Jeff?
We're live.
Oh, all right. I thought we got some warning to that. I thought I did a ding, ding, ding in the countdown.
Yeah, right.
Here we are.
Hi, everyone. It's Steven Slate and Michelle Dunbar here. Mark couldn't be with us this evening. He had other things he needed to attend to. I just want to introduce us really quick for anybody that might be new that's watching us. We are the authors of the Freedom Model for Addictions. We are the originators of the original non-12-step program, and probably the only true, fully non-12-step program that's available in the country at this point. And we've been around since 1989. That's when the research began. We have a couple different products that we offer. We have our books. We have the Freedom Model for Addictions. We have the Freedom Model for the Family. Stephen is currently working on a book for people specifically on medication-assisted treatment, which is called MAT, or it's otherwise known as replacement therapy. And so we've got other products in the works. We offer private instruction. You can meet with us online, and we have a retreat, a really wonderful retreat for those people who feel like they need residential help, where the three of us actually teach there. We meet with you daily, and we're really excited to be able to offer that now. All of our classes are private. All of our bedrooms are private. It is an environment that is conducive to learning how to change your life. So on our Facebook Lives, what we do is we answer your questions, and we'll get right to it. We have a couple questions here that we received during the week, or the last 2 weeks since our last Facebook Live. And the first one is a pretty good, it's a pretty general question, but a good one. Can the Freedom Model be applied to any other struggles or addictions in our culture, such as gambling, porn, video gaming? Absolutely. The answer is absolutely. You wanna talk about that, Steve?
Yeah, the basic principles of the Freedom Model apply. If you get the book, The Freedom Model for Addictions, you'll learn all of that, or if you learn it at the retreat or whatever. But it is targeted. The book is targeted to substance use problems, so it all talks in those terms.
Yes.
Right. But if we want to lay out the basic theory of the Freedom Model, right? It's that we develop strong preferences for the object of our addiction, right?
Right.
Whether that's a drug or video games or gambling, shopping, porn, whatever, right? And we put it up on a pedestal. It becomes very important.
Right.
Not only do we like to get high, sometimes people think it's an escape or helps with emotional pain and that sort of thing, right? And sometimes people think they need it to socialize, to be suave, smooth, whoever they really want to be, break down shyness, right? There's a whole list of reasons that people want drugs and alcohol, and there's a list of reasons that people want gambling. They like to gamble or play video games, right? And then that stacks up against our other options in life. What's it like to be spending your time doing something other than gaming, right? And I think a lot of times people think there's nothing better for me to do, right? And you have to make inroads to other things, whatever it is. And so if you are gaming so much that, you're just, I don't know, what are the problems people have with gaming?
Well, now
what would be the negative things that they hate about it?
Well, the World Health Organization has now come out and said that is a viable addiction, that people, you look at, like, my son does it for a living, and when he was from about the age of 12 or 13, he would stay up half the night, and it was very troubling to Bob and I that he would stay up half the night playing these video games. And so, I mean, we turned off the internet at night. We were doing all of these things because he would be tired the next day. He wasn't going to school. So then we made a deal with him because we weren't going to be able to change what he was doing. Although I'm sure there are people out there that are going to be like, oh, you could have. But his goal from as long as I could remember was, I'm going to make a living doing this. And I can remember his older brother saying to me, Mom, he's really gifted and talented. And I think he really is one of those people that can make a living doing this. And then I started to do some research and I saw that. And I said, well, okay, we're going to let you do this within reasonable limits. But you got to keep up your schoolwork and you got to play at least one sport. He was a swimmer, a competitive swimmer. And because we wanted him to get some exercise. So there are people that'll, any video gamer that's at the elite level, much like an elite athlete that plays professional athletics, has to do it 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day to get to that level. And not everybody's going to get to that level, even if they do it that long. And they shirk their other responsibilities. A lot of, people don't eat right. They don't sleep. And you can't, if you're not making money doing it, then, you become that cliche of sitting in your mother's basement, playing video games and not talking to people.
Yeah. So the downsides are much the same as drug and alcohol use for a lot of people. It said there's this isolation and you're not keeping up with other important things in life. Exactly. And then people start to beat themselves up about that. Damn, why do I keep doing this even though I've now lost all my friends or feeling unhealthy and all that, right? And so you might hate those things, those consequences, right?
Right.
But if you don't feel like, cutting down the gaming is going to make you any happier, then you won't be motivated to cut down on the gaming,
Yeah.
Right? And this is how it is with drug and alcohol use. People stack up the long list of bad things happening with drugs, and they say, well, somebody should stop. That person should stop. It's so obvious. Well, maybe it's obvious to you, an outsider, but their perspective of their own options is very different than yours, right?
Right.
And so even though we could say it's obvious, or sometimes when we're really reflecting about our, addiction, and we're thinking about the big picture and say, if I sit around doing this all the time, I'll never get a girlfriend.
Right.
Say that, right? Or a boyfriend.
Right.
Right. And everything is so clear. Oh my God, in the long run, my life would be so great if I stopped. But then you get up tomorrow and it's like, well, either work on all those things that'll come years from now, or feel happy right now playing a video game, right? So as much as it can make sense to quit or cut back in the big picture, it often doesn't in the small picture. And am I going too in depth here, Michelle?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think
I got to get back to the question, right?
Yeah, but the question is, if you read the freedom model, are you going to be able to apply it to whatever your behavioral issue is? And I believe you can. I mean, there are what, maybe 5 or 6 chapters that are specifically about substances.
Yeah.
But the rest of the book is really about this idea that you lose control over something that you like doing.
Yeah. And so once you learn that it's not in the disease realm, right? And you come back to the place where you realize, you know what, this is a matter of choice, then you can get on with making the choice. But because people are beating us up about our gaming or gambling or drug use, whatever, we tend to think we got to focus on these negative things to change. And although they're going to play a role in the decision, it's not really what's going to fully motivate us and get us over the finish line to make a change. That's going to be looking at the benefits. And so we show people how to start analyzing whatever the object of their addiction is from the standpoint of benefits and competing options with competing benefits. not just one option, stacking up, oh, I'm, gaining weight, feeling sick, isolated, whatever, against I enjoy the game and I have friends that I talk to during the game and whatever. It's not just the one thing. You learn how to compare options, and that might sound simplistic, but it is simple in a way, but we've overcomplicated it in life. So we got to uncomplicate it.
Yeah. Our friend Rick said, you make it very clear, Stephen. So thank you, Rick. So here's the thing. Even with gaming, with gambling, with all of these things that we enjoy to do, when we really enjoy doing it, and especially if we feel like other areas of our life are unfulfilling, then we may, like food. I actually was reading something online today. Somebody was talking about, a lot of people use food to make them feel better. And, if things don't seem to be going well, and then you end up checking out, that's the other thing the freedom model addresses is, it does this, whatever it is that you're doing, actually help with those things. And when you really break it down, it doesn't. It never does. It may give you a brief moment of escape. But certainly that's when you can start looking at the benefits, especially if you take away the shame and the guilt and all of that. I can remember using the example of, with food, if you go into you go to a party and you have a cupcake and you've been on a diet and you start feeling guilty about having the cupcake. Well, what do you do with it after that? Do you have more cupcakes? Because damn, I just screwed that up. Or do you be like, okay, well, maybe I'll walk an extra half a mile and work off my cupcake? There's so much we address. We talk about the guilt, we talk about the shame, and by the way, does anybody else notice that the only things that are labeled addictions are the things that our society deems as negative? Just saying, that's something to think about. You don't, when you see a marathon runner, which I think is nuts, by the way, do you say that they're
bad for you?
And it isn't that good for you.
No.
But nobody says this person is addicted to running and that they have this running addiction. So, driving a car, I'm pretty freaking addicted to be able to get around in my car. But that's not a disease.
Yeah.
But I would be miserable if I couldn't drive. So
you know what I want to step in and say right now, because I've just been hearing it more and more from students lately. Like, you hear all the time out there in the world that addicts are, they're really trying to deliberate and be like, I'm not going to do it. And then they do it. But a lot of times when I talk to people, they say, you know what? No, I don't do that. I just do the thing, I don't try to stop myself. And those are the ones that end up getting to the point where they're willing to come see us, right?
Yes.
And, they feel pretty beat down. And what ends up being the case is they're the biggest believers in addiction. They've heard all of this crap. And so they just kind of resign themselves to immediately acting on the whim to do the thing again and again and again. And so what we're doing in the freedom model is we're saying, hey, wait a minute. All that bull crap you've heard, like, you're shutting your mind down and just feeling like, well, this is who I am because my brain has changed and people are just shutting down. They're not even trying to make a change anymore. That's what I'm hearing more often. And so we bring that all up to the surface and just look at it in a really logical way. And you'd be amazed how much of a difference that makes once you just start looking at it logically and you take the time to do that. Exactly.
Completely. Like, anytime you have a problem, and you keep looking at it the same way and you can't see a solution, sometimes all it takes is to turn something 180 degrees and all of a sudden you see, like I don't know, I play word games all the time, and sometimes it'll let you shuffle the letters. You know what I mean? Like, because you can't see the word that might be in them. So it says you hit the shuffle the letters button and you have a new perspective. And that's kind of what we do is we shuffle things around and we're like, all right, now look at it from this way and a way where it's non-moralistic, non-judgmental. You know, and we understand why you might like doing this. You know, you probably you obviously like it on some level, and it's good. It's fine. It's okay. There are reasons to like it. So we've beaten this one. So
yes, it does apply to other,
absolutely does. Absolutely does. I have a fellow coworker that seems to be struggling with substance use. I'm not a family member, but I'm concerned about her well-being. Which steps should I take to make sure she gets the help she needs without jeopardizing her employment more so than it already is? Oh, that's a tough one.
Well, you know what? You just if this is a person you care about, then you just talk to them personally.
Yeah, privately. Keep it very
privately. Don't bring it to the business. Right? I mean, if you don't want to jeopardize your career, don't say anything to anybody else at work.
Yeah,
don't gossip about it. Don't try to set up an intervention. Don't go to HR. Is it bad that I'm saying this?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think you say, hey, you want to go out and get some lunch or something? And the thing about it is when you broach the topic, the last thing you want to do is be like, hey, it seems like you got a problem with meth. I mean, I would just sit and ask the person, it seems like you're struggling, with something. And I want you to know that I'm here to help you. And it will keep this totally private. I mean, if you're close enough with that person that you have that relationship, it can be really difficult. But the last thing you want to do is be accusatory. And so if you think if it's illicit substances, or maybe the person's coming in hungover from nights of drinking, you really want to tread kind of lightly, depending on the relationship you have with this person, because it could go very, very badly and make this person not trust you. I mean, you definitely want to, I think having a meeting in a neutral location and feeling it out and waiting for the right moment to just offer your support, geez, I think I see you might have a problem with this, or I see you might be struggling with something. I read this book called The Freedom Model, and it might be helpful to you, and I don't judge it, and whatever's going on is your business. But I'm concerned because maybe even say, I'm concerned because people are starting to notice at work that something's going on, and I don't want you to lose your job because you're so valuable to the company, or you're so valuable to me as a friend, or something like that.
Yeah, as long as they're not like operating heavy machinery, then
or driving a bus full of school children.
Yeah, right. That's heavy machinery too, right? As long as they're not endangering anybody else's lives or their own through heavy machinery or whatever. But this is more one of those cases where I think we can say what not to do rather than what to do, right? What to do is more like connect from the heart and show that you're there to offer support. What not to do is to make it seem in any way that there's a threat and that you are going to coerce the person into getting help in some way. That's when you're going to get, what people call denial, right? And they think the person doesn't know they have a problem, but really they feel like, oh, I'm being put in a situation where if I give up any information that, I do use a little bit too much drugs, now I'm going to be raked over the coals with that, So people are afraid to have these open conversations because they're so used to how interventions are supposed to go and giving help is supposed to go, which is the person's just going to keep jabbing you until you get into a treatment system and they're going to up the ante. So you have to make sure that you convey you're not doing none of that crap. They still have their independence, right? Because even when that coercion of people works, it works on getting them to go through the motions.
That's right.
But they close up more. They become more isolated, more in their own world because they're afraid to ever let anybody know what they're doing because everybody's trying to separate them from the thing that makes them happy, you know?
Yeah,
So,
we have a free ebook for families or, friends, people who want to, approach someone that they feel might have a serious problem and might be, might need someone to talk to. And so that's something, if you want the free ebook, you can go to our website, thefreedommodel.org. And I believe it's on the family workshop page where you can download it.
all right, great.
Yeah. So, okay. We got a new question. Such an amazing output about addiction. As a psychotherapist, I find it so harmful to tell my patients you are an addict, diseased, and you will never get cured. We must empower people, not put them into a cage where one size fits all structures. What I see is that the patients that have these beliefs that they have a deathly disease are the ones who relapse more out of shame and lack of responsibility. I absolutely have always seen addiction as a control or coping mechanism. So, quick question: how would I proceed if a client has the disease model very rooted in their subconscious? This is great from a psychotherapist. I would say get the freedom model and have them read it, or the first probably 10 chapters really do debunk it very, very well. The whole disease model, but the very bad, the worst ones come to our retreat. I mean, it does take us 3 to 4 weeks to kind of undo that kind of damage. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Well, she's right, or he's
Yep.
right. I don't know who it was.
Adriana.
Okay.
Woman. Thank you, Adriana.
What?
I'm like, thank you, Adriana, for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Adriana. You're right, because there was just a study that came out this week that they pitted the disease model against what they call the growth mindset.
Yes.
View, which is in the freedom model, by the way. They designed little info sheets for people about addiction, had them read them, and then they ran sort of tests to figure out how they feel after reading them. And people feel less confident in their ability to change after reading the disease model one. And they're less willing to even get help because, they tell you it's a stable thing. Your brain is hijacked and changed, and you have to deal with this the rest of your life. So people kind of give up in the face of that. So your instincts are right. There's been other research findings over the years that have demonstrated the same thing. So when somebody's really stuck in that mindset, I would get them the book or recommend it to them.
Yeah.
And if your belief is that it's a coping mechanism, that can be true, but what is in the freedom model is going to be stuff that helps them to understand it ain't really helping them to cope, right? Yeah. So that could be very important information to people if that's what's going on. If they're the kind who says like, well, I'm so depressed, I need it. You can kind of look in the back, chapters 17 and 18 tackle whether drinking or drugging helps with depression, and it provides a lot of the science on that and a new understanding, and people can look at that. And a lot of people feel very freed by it, by finally understanding, oh yeah, it's not helping me all that much there. Here's what's really going on, and I can probably achieve that in other ways. So yeah, get them the freedom model. Is this too much of a self-promoting answer? Get them the freedom model.
Well, there's no easy way to convince people. If people are really bought into it, the whole idea, because the truth is, I personally think that most people with these problems don't buy into it fully ever. I didn't, but I was a skeptic, and based on some of my interactions with some of the people online, I do know that there are a lot of people that buy into it because it has certain benefits. I mean, that's the other thing she can address is there's certain benefits to playing the charade of I
Yeah.
have a disease of addiction. And so maybe you can approach it from that side too, which is, well, when I talk to people, I'm like, well, here's the deal. It's not been shown to be a disease scientifically. So you need to know that right up front. So what do you see are the benefits to believing that it is? Do you see any benefits to that? Maybe you can approach it from that side of things, which is, to challenge the person to basically support the idea that it's a disease, even though it isn't. I mean, and what they'll do to support it is they'll point to their own behaviors of, well, I said I wasn't going to drink and I did, or I said I wasn't going to do cocaine and then I went out and partied and I did cocaine. And then maybe challenge it that way and say, well, do you want to still believe it's a disease? Do you want it? Because if they do, then there's nothing you can do to help them, as far as I know. It's one of those things where, I'll even recommend to people if they talk to us at the Freedom Model and they are dead set that it's a disease and they are powerless, I'm like, then probably this isn't for you.
Definitely not for you, right?
Yeah.
Go to Betty Ford.
Right. There's literally every treatment program in the country like supports the disease model. So yeah, this is really for people looking for a way completely out of all of that.
Yeah, this model, the Freedom Model, is also really, more importantly than it's not a disease model program. It's not a treatment program.
Right, because there's no treatment if there's no disease.
There's no treatment if there's no disease, right? So we don't play that charade at all.
No.
There's nothing to be treated. There's a personal preference in place, and people are so strongly invested in that preference and continuing to use that kind of talking to them sometimes about this is they're going to keep putting up, here's the reason I really am incapable of stopping. Here's another reason I'm incapable.
Yes.
And it's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth like that. And you have to pluck each one apart.
You do.
But you can't do that if you also have to respect you also have to respect whatever their choice will be, right? That's why in the Freedom Model, throughout the text, we try to be extremely non-judgmental, and I know that that's a buzzword, but we don't decide the outcome. Like everybody who's going to read this book is going to quit or should moderate. We leave the decision entirely up to them. So any of the picking apart of all these excuses and justifications needs to be paired with like, I'm really going to help you examine your choices, and then you do what you will.
Yes, that's exactly right. Oh, Adriana just said she just bought the book. Thank you. She's thanking us. It's really great response. Thank you so much for watching. And Mark says the disease model renders not our Mark, but a different Mark says the disease model renders people powerless, which is completely useless in conquering addiction. That is exactly right. I even way back when I first went to AA, and I was everybody might know already because they've heard me say this, I was raised in AA. And so I was raised with the disease model. And if I drank, I would totally go off the rails, which I did very, very, very quickly. I still couldn't wrap my head around, and I went to college for behavioral health. I was a researcher. And what was interesting is I studied addiction in college. I studied developmental behavior and things like that. And everything like the research side of things, like I learned about learned helplessness, and I learned about, the growth mindset as opposed to fixed mind. I mean, I learned these things. And so what I was learning in certain developmental classes kind of didn't jive with the whole addiction disease model, and I couldn't reconcile it even way back then. So that when I went to AA myself and I'm hearing all this stuff, I kept asking questions. I actually just wrote an article about this. I kept asking questions, and I can remember one particular guru lady at an AA meeting said to me, like, I asked the question because I had quit drinking before I went to my first AA meeting, and I didn't want to have that lifestyle anymore. I didn't want to drink anymore, very, very heavily. I didn't want to drink at all anymore, and I didn't for a long time. And I said at a meeting, because somebody was, I don't remember what was being talked about, but I said, so if I don't want to drink, then why do I have to come to meetings, and what's going to make me, you keep saying that it's like waiting for me. What exactly is going to force me to drink? Like, if I don't pick up a drink and make that choice and do it, is there, and I would like do these mind games, like something was going to happen that was going to force me to drink, even though I was committed to not drinking. And she said to me that I was on a pink cloud, and that I should take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth.
In your mouth, yeah.
In my mouth. She literally said these things. So they were said to me. These women were so mean to me. You just need to know. And because I didn't know when to shut up. But I just, but I learned not to talk in the meetings, because nothing made sense to me. And so I knew then that I wanted to figure out how people changed. And so that's why we do what we do. Mark says, I used your home recovery workbook in 2006 and have been a recovered, he put that kind of with stars, alcoholic since then without any struggle. Changing your mindset is the key to overcoming addiction.
Oh, it's so great.
Love thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, there was a question further back. Did you see the one about the gift of desperation?
Oh, I want to see it again. And I was trying to look for it.
All right, I got it. You want me to read it?
Go ahead, read it.
In AA, people sometimes talk about the gift of desperation, or words like that. It's like when a person is fragile, they are particularly willing to take direction and affection. Drink the Kool-Aid. Can any of you remember feeling that way? Would you spend a minute or two on it? Thanks. Like, you're so fragile that you are open. You know what? When I went to High Watch Farm, I didn't want to go there at all, but I started to be devastated. This is like inpatient. It was all 12-step all day. And I had just gotten in trouble for buying heroin. I'd gotten arrested. Now my family was thinking of me as a junkie or whatever.
Right.
So I was starting to get very devastated there. And I'm not a believer. I'm an agnostic or an atheist, right? And by the end of it, I bought the daily prayer books, and I left there I had all that stuff, and I was really trying to do it. Now that effort didn't last very long, but yeah, I remember feeling so desperate that I would try this, but then none of it was clicking at all. And it was all just not, I'm like, oh, so basically I have to pray for a miracle, and so I remember sort of being there, and I didn't change. So I got worse. I mean, I did change. I got worse at that point, actually, but.
Yeah, I remember feeling, I very desperate. And, once the cat was out of the bag, because I really thought I was leading this double life, but then I had kind of failed out of college after 3 years. And, so a lot of my life was kind of crashing in on me. And so once I told my parents that, I'm a daily drinker. I drink from the moment I get up. I drive drunk. I was a heavy drug user up until about 6 months before I stopped drinking. So my dad took me to an AA meeting. Now he said to me, by then he was doing the research, and he was like, you don't have a disease. You're not powerless, but the God thing was still there. And we're being raised Catholic. My dad would say, God is not like Santa Claus. and that in AA, they believe in a Santa Claus God, where if you do the right thing, you'll get good things. And
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. He's like, if you're a believer, God already gave you everything you need. You have free will, you have choice. So he already gave you everything you need to figure this out. And back then we weren't really talking about preference and stuff like that, but it kind of amounted to that. It's like, you got to figure out what you want in your life, and you got to move in that direction, and you got to do things that get you towards those goals. And but I remember being desperate, and he told me to talk to the women, and I got a sponsor, and she was a really nice person. And I started doing the motions through the steps. But I got to tell you, at 3 months into it, I was so confused. I was so, I didn't buy it all, and I was literally suicidal 3 months into being sober.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't feeling any better, and I thought, if I have to go to these meetings every day for the rest of my life, I would rather be dead. I would rather drink myself to death than have to go. I mean, and I know a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thankfully I got more involved with my dad's group, because I didn't get along with my dad, so I didn't want to be involved with them. So I tried to jump into AA with both feet, and I did not like it. It was not for me.
You don't want to say something else about this? I was in desperation for 5 years after that rehab.
Yeah.
And I encountered plenty of systems of help and people trying to make me change during that time. And for me, it was not until I got a message that actually made sense, which was from your dad and Mark and Clayton and everybody up at the retreat, which was, you don't have a disease. You're in control. You're trying to be happy by doing this. And maybe you'd be happier making a change. You got to figure that out. And so desperation ain't enough. You got to know what to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. We have a long question that I wanted to get to tonight. She's somebody who bought our book. She said it's fantastic. She thanks us for it. She's finishing it up, and she said it's very enlightening. She's figured out her own personal reasons. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's really, really long, and I don't want to give it all away, but she's figured out her own reasons that are driving her towards liking heavy intoxication. And there's one thing that's bothering her, and that's what her question is. She said, I may know the truth about drugs and that their effects are just perceived by the individual and are surrounded by the social context. I may know that it is just active placebo, and the reasons for taking them are the matter of thoughts and beliefs. And in fact, they don't have any inherent qualities that so many people believe that they have. But still, the rest will remain blind to that. And I can't imagine that I'm explaining it to everyone around me. To make my question simple, what do I tell people when they ask why I quit? I know that fulfilling expectations of others just because they think they know better is stupid, but I think feelings of alienation and anxiety in social situations may be very real because of their lack of understanding.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
What I would say, I mean, if people ask why you don't drink it or whatever anymore, is just that you could say something like, I've gotten all I can out of it. I just don't like it that much anymore.
Yeah.
A few times I was drinking and I just felt groggy and crappy, and it wasn't as rewarding as it used to be. You could say that kind of thing. It sounds like you don't need to tell other people that drugs are an active placebo. We only need to resort to that information when we feel a need for it,
Yeah.
That's when you need to really look at what's going on. It's kind of a benign myth for most of the world, the idea that, if your wife leaves you, you'll feel all better if you just get totally drunk at the bar.
Right.
That's a benign myth most of the time. And then when we feel like we can't get through a day and face the world without drinking, though, that's when you got to look at that myth and kind of pick apart what's there. So you don't need to tell other people about that unless they're interested in that. And most people, I run into so many people that are afraid to stick out. I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb
If I'm right.
if I'm not drinking or whatever. And most people are pretty delighted to find out that that's not the fact. You get some weirdos that are like, why don't you drink? Oh, I feel like you're keeping tabs on us, around all us drinkers. Or
Right.
I've encountered that weird thing, and it's like, that's a person who is deeply ashamed of their own drinking. So pay it no mind. I mean, honestly, really don't. Most people are not paying attention, and they don't give a shit if you don't drink.
That's totally true. I worked for an organization. I didn't drink for 20 years at all. And I worked, I was young, I'm in my late 20s, and I worked for an organization where we worked really hard and they played hard. And I can remember, my husband and I went to this gala that they threw, and everybody I worked with was all excited because they threw this gala at this beautiful place in Western Massachusetts, and then we all got to spend the night. And they bussed us so that people could get loaded. And these people were, my boss, his boss, people were. One of the guys used to say, "We're going to get snot slinging drunk," and it was hysterical. And so everybody was so hammered that nobody had any idea that my husband and I were drinking. Like, people came back to me later and were like, did you guys get hammered? And I'm like, no, we didn't, but we watched you and it was a riot. But I do know what it's like if you have a group of friends, because I did this. I had a group of friends that I partied with a lot, and then all of a sudden I stopped doing all of that. When I stopped drugs, I kind of shifted from the drug using friends to just drinking friends. And then when I was drinking heavily, there were a few of my close friends that stayed my close friends, but we didn't hang out that much anymore. And I just was like, I'm just moving on with my life. It's not, we change our preferences all the time. My youngest son used to have pancakes every Sunday morning. And one day he was like, I don't like pancakes. Like, I had made pancakes. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have pancakes every Sunday the last 8 years of your life. He's like, I don't like them anymore. And so that happens. People's preferences change. Yeah. And if somebody's like, hey, you're not drinking, you'd be like, nah. You could even go, I'm not feeling it tonight. I'm not really feeling it tonight. And then eventually the person will be like, well, you're not drinking anymore, are you? And it's like, yeah, it's just, it doesn't, I'm not into it anymore. It's not what it used to be,
Yeah.
And so
and hopefully if this is what we're trying to give you in the freedom model, is the ability to make that kind of choice about it. If that's how we're giving you the ammunition to really examine alcohol and look at what you're getting out of it, and to look at drugs and what you're getting out of it. And so that you can say, I'm just not that interested anymore, even if that's moderation, or if it's quitting, that you can say that and mean it. And it should be acceptable for us to say, when people say, why do you drink? Because I want to, I like it.
Yes.
And why do you not drink? Because I don't like it anymore. It's your life. It is your life. And part of what gets us so confused and really separated from our ability to change is we're saying all this crap for other people.
Yes.
We have to start saying, I drink for stress, just so that we can have an acceptable reason to drink to other people sometimes.
Yes.
Right? When you drink a lot and people are judgmental, ooh, why are you doing that? Sorry, I have so much stress. Get off my fucking back, right? We have to start saying that, we start to believe that, right? And it's the same with all of this. Most of what people say about why they drink or use drugs ends up being justification. And I know that sounds harsh, but once you actually see through the charade, you'll understand that's a lot of what you were doing when you were struggling with drugs or alcohol. And it is really nice to just claim it. You know what? And sometimes what it takes to quit is to claim your drinking or drug use for yourself for a while and say, I'm not giving anybody excuses or answers that they like anymore.
Right.
I'm telling them to screw off. I want to get drunk right now. This is how I am wallowing in my pain right now. Like whatever. So this is how I'm partying right now. I don't want to miss this point in my life where I can be a 20-something going to bars and screwing everyone. Like whatever you want to say. It's like maybe sometimes you got to own it that way for a while, so that then you can say, oh, actually, yeah, I've run my course with that. I don't want it anymore.
Right. Yeah. I have to answer this quick before it goes off my screen. Adriana asked, what about the Sinclaire method? I have a client that's doing very well on it. Another one who is not and is not following the instructions. So confusing. And the Sinclaire method is part of MAT. It's medicated assisted treatment that's used for alcohol. And Steve is really the expert on this. So I'll let him answer that.
Yeah. The reason that the other person, well, I don't know. I don't know fully, right? But the reason that people don't comply with treatment, follow the instructions, is because they're not motivated to do so.
Right.
So that person probably still wants to be getting drunk, and it's probably why they're not following the instructions. And the person who's successful with it really was ready to make a change and move on. Best not to burst her bubble or anything. Like, don't show her the freedom model, because we talk about naltrexone in it and why it doesn't really, it's the individual making the choice and not the naltrexone. We do put
right. It's better than placebo.
Yeah, it kind of, it kind of works as a placebo, but if you have knowledge, the best way you could use naltrexone is to never ask any questions about how it works, and have somebody slip it into your food, and then you take it and you're drinking, and you're like, why doesn't alcohol feel as good as it used to? Because that's all it does, right? It changes the way you experience alcohol. But if you know that the pill is doing that, and you do want to experience the full effects of alcohol, then you won't take the pill, right? So this person who it's not working for really needs to dig deeper and figure out why the heck they're so in love with alcohol, and be able to get some perspective on it. And once you know why, and once you start thinking of that it could possibly be better to change, then you can be motivated to change. Like, that's the biggest problem with all of treatment. You give people a million techniques, and they won't use them if they don't believe it's worth using the technique. They won't use the technique, right?
Yeah, Rick says, he goes, as soon as you know what naltrexone does, you just skip it when you want to get a buzz.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're drinking to get a buzz and you want to get a buzz, and you know that naltrexone won't allow it, you'll be like, okay, I'm not going to take my naltrexone today so that I can get a buzz. Because it all really comes down to the substance doesn't change the content of your thoughts. Naltrexone is a lot like the weight loss surgery. If the vast majority of people who get weight loss surgery gain back all their weight eventually. But what the weight loss surgery does is, if you eat too much, it makes you sick. And so that's supposed to change, it's supposed to make you not like it. But that's the same as trying to use negative consequences to change your preference. So, this, antabuse does that too with alcohol. If you take antabuse, then you'll get violently ill. If you're drinking, well, you decide, if I want to drink, I'm not going to take the antabuse. So it really does come down to figuring out how to change your preference, which only is done by weighing benefits. And that's basically what the freedom model talks about. I wanted to, Mark had asked Mark, who's conversing with us, had asked a question earlier. So I'm going to shift gears because I wanted to address it because we're running low on time. Where he said, when you when you get sober and you stop drinking, all of your problems are still there because you were using it. If you were using it to numb, you numb your problems or whatever. And the thing about it is, I kind of see where this might be going, and that is that, you know, your problems cause you to drink, and we do it. Like, people ask me, like, do you address trauma, and do you address you know, depression and anxiety, you know, that tend to cause substance use? And yes, we absolutely talk about it in the freedom model, but what we do, there's not a causal relationship. So we explain that in depth, that people use it as a reason. And then there can be a downward spiral where you use your depression, your anxiety, your trauma to cause you to drink, to use it as a reason to drink. And then you get more depressed and more anxious, and you probably create more trauma in your life because of your heavy substance use. And so it's this snowball, you know, rolling down a hill, getting bigger and bigger. And so what we do is we disconnect them, so that people can see that this isn't helping. You know, the drinking isn't helping any of that. Yes, that's right, Rick. It's reasons versus causes. We have a whole chapter on this. And so we untie all that so that people can address their depression, their anxiety, their trauma, all of these things more effectively over here, because the substance use problem is now out of the way. So I explain that really quickly, you know, but we do address it in the book.
Here's another thing. All the everything you were trying to numb is still there while you're supposedly numbing it.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of people get drunk or high and go deeper into the hole, like immediately. They're still thinking about what upsets them. There's nothing about alcohol or drugs that necessarily takes away the really knowledge of what is going wrong in our lives, right? Because these emotions are an intellectual response. They're not just random chemicals squirting in our heads. When you have a negative emotion, that is you looking at a situation in life and assessing it lightning fast. It's almost it's an automatic process, but there's an assessment going on based on what you value, how you see the situation, and then you feel bad, right? And drugs don't change that. What drugs and alcohol can do is sometimes the experience is so attention grabbing that you don't think about your problems, right?
Yes, it's a distraction.
It's a distraction, right? And this is not the best analogy, but I used it the other day to explain to somebody and they got it, which is that when you are learning something, like if you're, think of the old days when you had to get a map out or somebody gave you directions and you had to remember those directions to drive somewhere. You're not going to be carrying on a conversation with somebody else in the car. You're not going to be fooling with the radio, listening to people yammering on the radio. You're not going to be doing that. You're going to be focused on following these directions and getting somewhere. It's totally attention grabbing. But now, once you've driven that way 10 times and you don't have to think about it, now you can futz with the radio. Now you can talk to the person next to you. Now you can eat while you're driving. It's not as much of an attention grabbing activity, right? And it is the same with drinking and drugs. So people get fooled because at first being drunk is so overwhelming and attention grabbing that, yeah, you do temporarily forget your problems.
Right.
But after a while, we grow sort of a tolerance, mental or behavioral tolerance to the effects of drugs. And you see that when you see it with people who smoke tons of pot, who can totally work fine and everything while they're on it. And you know, I mean, I couldn't imagine it, but people do that because they smoke it so much. They're used to be able to, they can walk and chew, they can be high and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
And that's what happens with all of us if we use a drug enough, right? And so with alcohol too, people keep pushing it and trying to get drunker to make it a more attention-grabbing experience. But you can only push that so far before you start blacking out and everything. It's an endless hole that you get into trying to do that. It really, like, so at best, drugs work as a distraction from negative feelings. And for many people, they end up there comes a point where they're just as miserable drinking as being sober. I'm sorry, I'm taking way too long. I know we're
no. I think that was really good. And you brought up something that reminded me what we talked about before we went live, and that was, I'm one of the Facebook groups that I'm in. There was somebody talking about, she has a problem with marijuana and she really wants to stop it. And in a lot of the non-12-step Facebook groups now, everybody's like, everybody should smoke marijuana. That's the answer to the opiate problem. That's the answer to alcoholism. That's the answer to this and that. And I want to, and I get the frustration there, because I was somebody that had a severe problem with marijuana way back when. And it was one of the drugs that I quit, but it was something I, for a long time, felt like helped me with certain things. And she was like frustrated because, here she is trying to get help on how to stop it. And everybody's like, you should just keep doing it. It's not that bad. But that's kind of like anything that people want to change, there's marijuana is not, I mean, I'm not knocking. I think people should be able to do whatever they want to do. I think drugs should be totally legal and people should be able to use what they want to use. And I think it should be regulated so that people know what they're getting. But at the same token, if people want to stop, they have good reasons, just like there's good reasons to use, there's good reasons to want to not use it. And so I suggested she read our book and look at, look at the perceived benefits. Cause that's truly what I did when I quit marijuana, when I was still drinking. That's how I did it. I was like, marijuana was helping me because I was drinking a lot and I had an ulcer and I was sick a lot. So it was actually helping with my stomach. But then with all the other things I thought it was helping with, it wasn't. So I was like, and it was illegal and there was all this. So I was like, I'll just stick with drinking. And because I felt like that was still helping me. But I want to caution some of our friends that are in these groups about the idea that, try not to look at these marijuana or methadone or Suboxone as these, what am I saying, panacea.
Silver bullet, miracle drugs, right? Snake oils. That's what marijuana is being made out to be. And look, I love marijuana. I think it's great. It's wonderful. People use it. They have fun.
Absolutely.
And it does help with some medical conditions, with nausea, with epilepsy.
It does.
But to say it, like when people say it's a treatment for opioid addiction, it's not. You might like to use marijuana instead of opioids. Wonderful. Great. It doesn't treat the addiction. And now I'm going to go too deep on that, so I'll shut up. But these drugs don't make all your stress go away. They don't do this, that. We're building it up way too much. Marijuana is not this terrible, awful thing, the gateway drug, reefer madness, but it also is not like God's gift of,
right.
It's not the cure-all either. The truth is in the middle there somewhere.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. We're coming up on the hour. We've only got about a minute left. I think this was thank you so much, everybody, for all the great questions and the great discussion. I just want to remind you that it's a wonderful thing that Stephen, Mark, and I are now teaching at the retreat. If you come to the retreat, you will work with one of us directly, or all three of us if you wanted to. We're around most of the time. And Stephen still offers the private instruction online via Skype. That's a great option for people who want to fit it into their work schedule or stay at home. And you can learn all about us at either soberforever.net or baldwinresearch.com or thefreedommodel.org. We actually have a number of different websites. So, we, and you can call us at 888-424-2626. So thank you, Stephen, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. And check out our Facebook, our blog. Check out we're on all Facebook. Obviously, you're on Facebook with us, but we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. We have a podcast that we do, so you can check that out too.
The Addiction Solution podcast. Look that up on iTunes.
Yeah, Addiction Solution. That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.